Well, I am really excited today to be talking to my guest who is actually the founder of All Y'all Foods. So guess where he's from? I think you can guess it's Texas. And Brett Christoffel, he is the founder and CEO of All Y'all Foods. And it's interesting because when you think of Texas, you think of cows and you think of big steaks and you think of people having big barbecues. And Brett actually used to be a carnivore and now is a vegan. He's a plant-based eater, and he created the perfect food for those of us who love plant-based foods and we don't want to consume animals. So Brett, with that, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, let's start with your journey into being a vegan and what the byproduct of you giving up animal meat and dairy, one of the byproducts to your health has been, and then let's talk about your business.
Sure. Like everyone else, I grew up in a standard American home and a standard American diet, which is just sad. And it was meat-centric. And that's how we ate, and that's how I thought the world ate. And I can remember the first time I heard about Meatless Mondays, I chuckled. I was by myself, I was in my car, and I heard it. I laughed out loud because I was like, in my mind, I couldn't even think of a meatless snack. I mean, that's how wrapped around meat I was. So when people look at me like I got two heads, talking about plants being all we need, I totally understand. I get it. And so at one point, it just landed on me that all animals are present and they don't want to die, and we kill 100,000 animals every minute of every day, and we don't need to, because everything we need is actually in the plants that they eat, so we can go right to the plants. And so I stopped eating them. That's been just over 7 years ago now. And after that, I had read that I was in this space before as far as a vegan food space. Though I wasn't vegan, I just found out that it was actually the most nourishing thing you could serve people. So I got involved in it. And then I read that beef is our second largest export next to cotton in Texas. And it upset me. And again, because I love a cow like I love a dog, can't explain it, but here I am. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do jerky. I can do jerky. And I had worked with the dehydrator really well before, so I was very familiar with it, and got to work. And so I created 7 flavors because there's 7 regions of Texas. I wanted to be very Texas brand. So I created 7 different flavors. I was told by a distributor, don't come out with 7 flavors, pick your top 3, go with those, start there. And so I'm like, okay. So I did that. And we use things like the prickly pear because it's actually the state plant of Texas. So we use the juice from the fruit of the prickly pear cactus in a couple of in our teriyaki and our chipotle marinades. We use, pecan tree smoke for our black pepper sea salt, because the pecan tree is a state tree of Texas. And then when I was putting the company together, I knew I wanted to connect with a local sanctuary. There's a lot of wonderful sanctuaries in the state of Texas. And I met Renee from Rowdy Girl, who actually had the largest herd of sanctuary cows. And I'm like, beef, cow, okay, makes sense. So a portion from every bag sold goes to them. And in the process for me along the way, I had found out early on that I was able to use plant-based omega-3s and whole plant-based foods to reverse depression about 10 years ago. And that was my first inkling into the fact.
And actually, I want to take a step back before we get too much into the business side of things. And the Vegan Visibility Show is all about business. It's how people market their vegan businesses. And that's the name, Vegan Visibility. But let's go back a little bit to your own health. Now, I know that you had some changes in your health. You actually, if I recall right, you dropped a few pounds.
Yeah, I've since I went to changed to plants only, I've dropped over 100 pounds.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's important for people to hear, because oftentimes they just assume that we go from a carnivore diet, the SAD diet, into a vegan plant-based diet, and nothing changes other than we don't consume animals. And really our health dramatically changes. So what have been some of the health byproducts and health benefits of you, besides losing 100 pounds? That's over 100 pounds. That's phenomenal. What else
Yeah.
has changed for you?
Well, in the beginning, I learned in the very beginning, before the animals actually became a part of my way of thinking, I was I was I was let in on the secret that our brains are over half fat, and if all we're using are bad fats, which in my case it came from meat, processed or fast foods, then we're going to have mental health issues. And so I suffered from depression for about a decade, and I started ingesting whole foods as well as omega-3s, and this was in the form of fresh ground flaxseed. And I was told that it can reverse or eliminate bipolar disorder, depression, or ADD. And so I'm like, doesn't cost anything, give it a go. And so within 4 months, though, I stopped all medication for depression and have never looked back. So that really let me in that there's really something to this. And then I've met
Right.
people on the way who use plants to heal their bodies of diseases time and time and time again. And so it's as real as it gets. And so for me, because a majority of all, at least based on 900 peer-reviewed studies, a majority of all heart disease, cancer, diabetes is directly linked to the consumption of animal protein. And so here's a way to really kind of step up your game as far as uh, being a bit healthier, because
Absolutely.
when
Well,
we
and
ingest, when we ingest vegetables instead of animal products, they're processed in a very timely fashion,
right.
exert nearly as much energy to process.
Well, and that was one thing that really interested me about having you on the show, is one, the weight loss that you've had and getting rid of depression, because I tend to believe the further I go into this, and I'm still a baby vegan, I'm coming up on 5 years, but the further I go into this, the more I realize that a lot of the violence that we have, a lot of the social problems and the emotional and mental problems that we have, depression, bipolar, all of that is directly related to what people eat. And so to have people step up to the plate and say, hey, that was me, and now this is who I am, I love it. Now that led into you starting your business, All Y'all Foods, and really curious, like when did you start the business, and what was the catalyst for you saying, I can actually provide a food that people love in Texas and elsewhere, and not harm the cows on the way, because you love cows as much as you love dogs. I love that phrase. I love cows as much as I love dogs. So
Mm-hmm.
when did you start the business, and what was your catalyst for that?
Well, the catalyst was learning that beef was our second largest export in Texas. In fact, we're the
Mhm.
largest beef producer in the country. So what's really neat is we're also the largest petrochemical producer in the country, but we're also the largest wind energy producer in the country. 23% of all wind energy is created here in Texas. So because we do the beef more than anyone else, I'm committed to us doing plant-based proteins more than anyone else.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of the more people learn and the more people investigate, the more they're going to shift, because 90% of all plant-based foods, and I'm not talking about fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, mushrooms. I'm talking about, replacement products from
Mhm.
meat to dairy to eggs, are consumed by people who still eat meat.
Interesting.
90%.
Interesting.
So yeah, so the fact is there's this large group of people who are enjoying our products who aren't all the way there.
Well,
They
let me
don't-
ask you this.
yeah,
This is really a nice opportunity to present the position I have of, like, I want to educate people as much as possible, because most people
sure.
have no clue the horrendous treatment that animals go through before they're actually slaughtered. The confinement that they're bred into existence through forced breeding, often called rape, and they have what are called rape racks for the animals. So going into that, how much do you think we will be able to progress in educating people once they say, okay, I'm willing to try a substitute as long as it tastes good, because that's always the issue. Does it taste good? So
Sure.
then when people start discovering the truth about the animal production, where do you see things going with that in the future? And what's your role in all that, Brett?
Well, the more people want to find out, the more they can. They have to be willing to investigate. I've had people ask me, how do I include more vegetables in my diet? And it's like, have you seen Earthlings or Dominion yet?
Right.
And the fact is I think it would be interesting if there were a system where if you wanted to eat certain things, you had to go through the entire process with that animal and end its life and take it apart and cut it up, that we end up in the restaurant or in the grocery store getting these neat little packages. But if you get on the front end of that and take it all the way through, you'd have a much better appreciation for what's really going on. And it's called cognitive dissonance. It's a real thing. And I think people will get to it in various ways, because you'll have people who do vigils at slaughterhouses. They'll do cubes of truth, again, to educate people. Hey, look, at least know what's going on, what you're supporting. And for me right now, the thing where I land is people always want more peace and kindness and compassion in the world, and it starts and ends on our plate.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head with that one, for sure. So I appreciate that.
Whether we're able to acknowledge it or not, it does.
That's a big part of it, is people being willing to acknowledge it, and people being willing to get beyond, oh, I can't watch that video because then I won't want to eat meat. It's like, okay, that's kind of where the disconnect happens in the cognitive dissonance. So before we go any further, Brett, how do people reach you? What's the easiest way for people to find out about your company, about your products? And then I want to get into the products.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Our website, allyallsfoods.com. Or we're on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube under All Y'all's Foods. So I would say you can find us in those places, and
Wonderful.
We're on Amazon, of course, too.
Okay, All Y'all Foods. And I want to talk about how you came up with the name. But before we do, what would you say is your best social platform between TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and all that? What is your favorite, and where do you get the greatest response?
Well, that's a really good question, because we just made a big change this month. We were just focused on Facebook and Instagram, and realized that while our growth it's all been organic, we haven't bought anything or done anything like that. We've steadily grown our business. It's just real slow. So we've since expanded beginning this month, on TikTok, on YouTube with YouTube Shorts, as well as putting more information on LinkedIn. But I would say, depending on the product in that, you can get an amazing amount of traction or get in front of that many more eyes right now on TikTok.
TikTok definitely seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, that and YouTube Shorts we get a lot of traction there as well now.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes so that people can easily find you. Now,
awesome. Thank you.
You betcha. With All Y'all Foods, how did you come up with that name, other than the fact you're from Texas? But who came up with the name?
I did.
Okay.
I came up with It's Jerky Y'all. I wanted to come up with a name that was inclusive. And because it wasn't like I was just making a product for people who see the world as I do. Okay, because our numbers are actually very small, but I wanted to produce a product and educate people about, look, man, you can actually get a jerky, an enjoyable experience, and all the protein you ever need from plants. And so for me, it's really like a part of it is an educational piece. And then as I was growing the company, I realized I really need to focus on those who want it, and then work on those outside of that. So that's what we've done since we started is again a bit of education, but mostly we just want to delight and nourish consumers.
Well, in addition to Amazon and your website, where else can people find your product? Is it in stores locally?
Yeah. We're in 350 doors from LA to New York City.
Okay.
140 of those being HEB here in Texas. And we're growing. We're going into other retailers as we speak, where everything's getting worked out. So the easiest place to find us is on our website or Amazon.
Okay.
But there are stores, like I said, from Bestie's Vegan Paradise to like Orchard Grocer.
Okay.
City.
And you're probably getting to the point where people are saying, "Oh, you're so lucky, Brett. You're in all these stores." Now let's talk about what luck really means in business. It means when you've worked your butt off and opportunity and preparedness meet, and that's when luck happens. So for those people who have an idea for an actual physical product, and maybe it's a type of food, maybe it's a makeup, whatever it may be, what are some things that you could actually caution them about when they're moving into business? Because you've probably overcome a lot of the hurdles. And first of all, the cautionary message that you have, and then what are some of the things they absolutely must do in order to succeed?
Well, in order to succeed, make sure you have enough money. Don't give up. There you go. I'll start with that. But primarily, I would say is, just because we think it's going to be good and we like it or our friends like it, does that mean the public's going to like it? I don't know. But you can easily find out by setting up at local farmers markets or community markets or pop-ups or other events. You just have to get in front of the people and get enough people to try it, because again, friends and family are generally going to be kinder than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they're not going to be your only customers. So it's important to get it in front of a lot more people. If you know someone who's involved in an organization and they're going to have some kind of an event, there might be an opportunity for you to sample at one of their events or something outside without having to pay all the money that you normally would pay to be at the farmer's market or flea market or whatever the situation may be. But get it out in small amounts, because at least in the state of Texas, I don't know how it works everywhere else, but in the state of Texas, we have cottage laws, which allow individuals to manufacture in their kitchens at home and be able to sell it at events. Now, you can't manufacture in your home and put it on a shelf and put a UPC code on it and leave it. Okay, this has to be real time with you present, that kind of thing. So it varies from state to state, but you can get into the game and try it without spending a lot of money.
And when you say that you should get in front of a lot of people, how many is a lot of people? Is it 100? Is it 500? Is it 1,000?
That depends on the individual.
Okay.
In other words, if you sampled to 100 people and you got feedback from 100 people, that may be the exact same feedback you got from 10,000 or 100,000 people. Okay. It's just a smaller number. So I can't say I can't say what number should be okay with you. It's just at some point, and for me, it was dozens of people.
Okay,
hundreds or thousands.
So let's pull back the cover a little bit on where would you say, as you, from the time you started your business to now, what has been one of your greatest obstacles or failures that turned into a success?
I would say obstacles, because there aren't any failures really. They're just lessons. But working in the volumes I do with manufacturers. So we'll work with what we call co-mans or co-manufacturers, and we'll also work with fulfillment partners, and they'll help us fulfill all our orders. And sometimes those relationships will go south for any number of reasons. I mean, you could start a list and just keep going because it's possible. And what you have to do is just shift, and be willing to do it a lot. And that means, okay, this path, this is not working, what will work, and figure it out and go. You can't sit around and think on it or spend too much time. You just got to take action. And so that would be the biggest thing, is be decisive. And if there are times where you can't be decisive, you feel you need to take 24 hours.
Right.
Think about it, pray on it, meditate, whatever you do, and get clarity on it and then go forward. But you can't just sit.
Well, I love what you said about pray on it, because I have a business associate. I'm in Oregon and she's in Atlanta, Georgia. And when we're bidding for a client, when we're putting a proposal together, we actually pray before we send it out, because we really believe in the power of prayer and that the right choice will be made. So with that in mind, with the right choices being made, is it the right choice for small manufacturing companies that want to expand, is it the right choice for them to get investors? If so, what's the best way for them to go about getting investors? Do they have to put a pitch deck together? Do they have to, go look for angel funding? What's the whole take on that from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's a whole other business of raising money. That's a
Okay.
whole business unto itself. Um, well, it depends. There are people, especially in tech companies, where they'll just take ideas and raise tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on an idea. We don't
Right.
have anything for real, but it just amazes me. And then there are others like myself where you start to grow your product, you start to grow sales, and you keep growing every year. And then at some point you need to reach out to get a hold of more money to grow the company further. Um, they say normally people will start off their company on their own, under their own steam, and then they'll go to friends and family to raise money, which would essentially, if you haven't come to market, it's a pre-seed round. If you're at market, it's a seed round, as I understand it. Not a professional in that arena.
Okay.
But the thing is you've got to be willing to give up part of your company, and you can't give away part of a company that's not a C corp. Okay, you can't. I went through the SKU accelerator out of Austin, which is the oldest CPG accelerator in the country. It's about 10 years old. And I went through it in 2020 because I didn't know what I didn't know. And it turns out I didn't know a bit. And so the main thing is to take a look at where you're at, where you want to be, and how can you get there for the least amount of money. And, it's way too long of a conversation to say what makes the most sense for people.
Right.
But I will say that there are groups, Angel Span out of Austin being one of them, that help founders share their story. There's also a group that does Power to Pitch, and they help people put their deck together and their pitch together. And they're really great at what they do. So there's just a lot of tools out there, and it's not as clear and clean and cut. So I can't really speak to it that well, what would work for people. All I know is that, when it comes to fiduciary responsibility, it's a big deal.
Right.
And you don't want to mess around with other people's money.
Absolutely.
So, essentially you go to your friends and family first, and you get that seed or that pre-seed round raised. And then you look to do maybe again, that seed round or that A round, and then you're going to start talking with angel investors. VCs usually don't come in until they're cutting $2.5 to $5 million checks. So it just depends, because then you'll talk to others and they're like, well, we're doing this. And so there's no clear, clean, easy way to discuss that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, and I want to remind people you're listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. My name is Kathleen Gage. I'm your host, and I'm talking with Brett, who is the founder of All Y'all Foods, and really want to get into the different products that you have. Now, you have 7 products.
We have 7 flavors of jerky, but we have 3 that we've released so far.
Okay.
And that was in May of 2018 we launched. And then in July of 2020, I launched It's Big Crunchy Bacony Bits, y'all, because I thought we could do better than what was available. Plus, I ate a lot of pork, so it's kind of an atonement thing. And so I worked on that formula for over a year. We launched, like I said, July of 2020, and within 6 months we hit #1 meatless bacon on Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's turned out to be our biggest seller. And
that's awesome. So where do you see your role in the whole vegan movement, your role with your business and your business growth? Where do you see that in 5 to 10 years? What would you, in a perfect world, like to see happen?
Just have a global footprint in 5 years. Yeah, there'd be no reason we couldn't be in all parts of North America, as well as, I don't know, maybe the UK and Asia.
Fantastic.
Depending on the country. So just growing, because the fact is I think it's 1 in 10 people will eat plants, and that's it, in another 10 years. So the numbers just keep trending that way, and the behaviors of the consumer, whether they eat meat, all day long, or they haven't touched it in years, they're buying lots of plant-based food. So the market, though it sits at about 8 billion now, is expected to be closer to 10 times that in less than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great space to be in, and we're really excited about the opportunities that lie ahead.
I love it. I love the fact that there's so much variety now for people who are choosing to at least explore what vegan meats taste like. Because I know, there's some people who say, oh, if you're going to be a vegan and a plant-based eater, you should never eat any of the meats that are vegan. And I don't agree with that. I think that anything that gets us to consume fewer animals and hurt fewer animals is the right thing to do. So in closing, what are your final thoughts for people?
Final thoughts. I would say if you haven't seen, say, Forks Over Knives, invest a couple hours into watching that, and learn some of the truths that are out there around food and our health. Because I think a lot of people have it made up that it's genetics, and it's just not. But that allows people to not feel bad about creating their own issues by what they eat. And so I would just say, learn a bit more about it and investigate on your own time, because there's a lot of really good stuff here, as well as the I don't know if I call it a peace of mind or comfort or what. There's just knowing that I didn't do any knowingly. Do animals get harmed when we process fruits and vegetables? Yes, it happens. We're talking about least harm possible.
Right.
And I live with the fact that I do the least harm possible. And that goes a long way.
It really does. And I feel the same way, because I can look at the animals differently now, and they look at me differently, I think, energetically. And it really ties into the whole emotions that go with what we're consuming. So, Brett, this has been delightful. I wish you the greatest success, and I appreciate all you're doing. And y'all keep doing what you're doing, because all y'all's food is definitely on track for major, major success. This is Kathleen Gage with Vegan Visibility, wishing you a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.